Hello and welcome to our second episode. So, I recently spoke to Anil Swarup, who is a former IAS officer of the 1981 batch. He has served in various capacities, including as the Coal Secretary of India and as Secretary of School Education. He is also an author who has written two books, including Not Just a Civil Servant and Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. So, here's sharing a snippet of the conversation that we had. So, you've always been an advocate of technology in removing corruption, and you've also followed this example in your career. So, can you tell us a bit about this in detail?
To me, technology is the answer to corruption. Lokpal and Lokayuks will make headlines, but I wonder whether they're going to impact corruption. Everyone is going to talk about Lokpal, but I don't think Lokpals and Lokayuks have demonstrated that they virtually are good for nothing. They don't impact corruption at all. But since they go after high valued individuals, they get headlines. To me, technology is the key to doing away with corruption. One of the major problems in corruption is the delay, which we call the use of speed money to fast track anything. And as I recall clearly in 2013, when I was made the head of the project monitoring group, in UPA 2, when everything was going wrong, all scams were breaking in, and I was asked to fast track projects above 1,000 crores. It would have been disaster for anyone to attempt that because of the environment that prevailed. But we managed to facilitate clearance of more than 5 lakh crores worth of project with not a single finger being pointed out through use of technology. And what was that? I mean, I have used technology throughout my career, but I think that was the high point of use of technology. Of course, it was used in coal also and in education, but the high point was the project monitoring group because the environment was very vitiated and hence the use of technology was important. And what does technology do? It makes everything transparent. And transparency would mean that I am not hiding anything. If I am not hiding anything, you can't attribute malafide. It's there in public domain. So what we did was any industry having an investment of more than 1,000 crore could go to the portal that we had created. They could provide the details, and when the details were accepted by us, they could convey the problem that they had in fast tracking a project, and they had to indicate the ministry where the problem was, and the problem directly went to a designated joint secretary of that ministry who was mandated to put his comment on the portal itself. No file, no paper. And then I used to hold tripartite meetings. In those meetings, I didn't ask these joint secretaries to take a decision in favor of these entities. I only asked them to take a decision. If they want to reject it, please reject it. Accept it, accept. Don't sit on the file. And that is what that expedited. Someone asked me, how did you manage to do that? 5 lakh crores is this huge sum. And at the time of UPT, I say it's very simple. It's human psychology. No matter how indifferent, inefficient that I may be as a civil servant, to the public, I'd like to appear to be efficient. No one would want to know, public to know that I'm sitting on this file for so long. Once you create that system through technology, I think civil servants also start moving. So I've just given you one example. My brush with technology actually began way back in 1990 when I was district magistrate, where I used a photocopying machine in record room. And then, of course, you wouldn't have been born then. Then that actually reduced corruption phenomenally because all the speed money was gone. All the money was there to get a copy of the record, a revenue record, expeditiously. All speed money. Photocopying meant that the record was brought, photocopy taken on that day itself it was given. Earlier, it used to take 7 days, 8 days. Because if you have read my book, I have mentioned there that the process was that the record was taken out, then it was copied by hand, and then it was compared by somebody and signed by third person. Shocking, absolutely. So that's where I learned that technology can be a game changer. And right through my career, I use technology, though I'm myself not a very good user of technology in the sense that I can barely operate my laptop. But I knew how technology could be used for speeding processes, for making things transparent. It helped me phenomenally as coal secretary. Because with all these scams happening, and I was supposed to do coal block auction. And it's not that we didn't commit mistakes. We committed a lot of mistakes. But they were there in public domain. So the moment we committed it, within an hour or 2 hours, we got a phone call, sir, wo galat hai wo. So we used to look at it and correct ourselves. Because to err is human. And I remember in the press conferences that I used to hold, on the following morning, I would start by admitting my mistake. So there was no newsworthy. So they knew I was admitting it, and I used to tell them, this is how we are correcting it. So I think it's, as I tweeted, I think I've tweeted today. I said it's not a question of either technology or expertise. There's so much emphasis on expertise. Expertise can be outsourced. The question is whether you have the person with the right attitude. That's the key.
Right. So do you think in today's day and age, social media can also help in enabling governance?
Certainly. I used social media phenomenally. I am using it still now. Social media is like nuclear energy. It can be used, it can be abused, it can be misused. Now, there are a lot of people who are misusing social media. Now, how do you stop them? You can't. So, since you can't start a parallel narrative. That's what we've done in Nexus of Good. We started a parallel narrative, and I'm surprised at the traction that positive news is also getting. Of course, it may not be as much as what is happening in Mumbai these days, but certainly people are looking at it. So you can't give up and say they've taken over, the negative people have taken over. I mean, the logic of Nexus of Good was, if all rascals and ruffians can come together and make life difficult for me, how about good people coming together and making life better for us? That is the bottom line.
What are your views on the national education policy?
I think it's an amazingly brilliant document, very comprehensive, very visionary. At a conceptual level, I don't have too many things to say, except that this opportunity could have been used to get private sector coming even now. So the money is going to be a major constraint. I've often said it's easy to come up with ideas, and policy is a conglomeration, aggregation of ideas, brilliant ideas, very well put. But for an idea or ideas to fructify and sustain in a country like ours, which is thankfully a democracy, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. I don't think the makers of policy had all these in mind. So whereas the policy is certainly politically acceptable, now cleared by the cabinet, it is most necessarily socially desirable. Every part of it is socially desirable. Technologically, I don't see much of a problem. But when it comes to money, I see a major problem. When it comes to administrative structures, I see a problem, because human resource will be a problem. So there are problems, but there are certain aspects of the policies which can be implemented without so much money. I'm sure that they're going to work on those areas first. And as and when money becomes available, they're going to use that money to implement the other parts of the policy.
So where do we draw the line between interference and involvement of the government in higher educational institutions?
See, I don't have much of an idea of higher education because I handled only school education. But my personal view is that everyone talks about giving freedom to higher education, but they don't actually do it. They keep meddling in the affairs. So is true of public sector undertakings. They keep meddling in. I mean, the government continues to meddle. I saw it in coal sector. I saw it in education. They continue to meddle. I think the line is very simple. You initially divide the functions, as we did in coal sector, we did it. I divided functions very clearly between what Coal India has to do and what we had to do in government. And we lived to that, and that's why coal production improved. Now you keep poking your nose and keep writing letters to them as if letters are going to improve coal production. Same is the case with higher education. You define the parameters and then leave them alone. You select your man for the job, and that is not merely for higher education, for anything. For a department, you select an appropriate secretary of the department, then don't call him every Saturday for a meeting and monitoring. We are very fond of monitoring, all of us are. We love monitoring. I remember when in coal, I used to tell the PMO, said, why should I monitor? They didn't understand this idea. I said, I'm a facilitator. Why shouldn't Chairman India, Coal India, do his job? We have selected him, and I can't keep monitoring him every week and asking him. No, you select the right person. हम मजाक में हिंदी में कहते हैं, पहले तो आप गधा बांध देते हैं, फिर उसे डंडा चलाते हैं. अरे आप अच्छा घोड़ा बांधिए तो छोड़ दीजिए काम करने को. But we don't do that. We try and somehow under some pressure get somebody somewhere and then start monitoring him. Why? At that level of seniority, when a guy has put in 30-35 years of service, he should be good enough to handle that situation. So my approach to whether Coal India or Chairman CBSE or Director NCRT was that you know your job. If you have a problem, come and tell me. I'll try and solve that problem for you. So I was more a helper than a monitor. To me, that's you remember I said in the beginning, the whole problem of attitude. We get experts. We get experts from across the Atlantic. We get experts through lateral entry. But we are not getting leaders. You got to get leaders. who know their role well, who can define their role, and not unnecessarily keep poking in the no. No, if you start believing that only I can do everything, then there is a serious problem. And if you're an expert, probably you'll have that feeling because you think that others are not expert. So I don't think we require expertise. We require attitude and leadership qualities.
You said that the education mafias exist underground. So can you explain this a little?
The background is as follows. When I joined the coal sector, before I joining, I rang up a friend of mine and asked him, "Yaar, coal sector kaisa hai?" Because I didn't have much of an idea. He said, "Gangs of Wasipur dekhi hai kya?" So that actually explained to me what coal sector was, replete with mafias. We sorted it out through coal production. But when I came from the dark dungeons of coal mines to the apparent bright lights of school education, I thought it will be well lit. But I found that it was darker than coal because here all the mafias were underground. In coal, they were overground. Here, they were underground. So very difficult to find them out. They were all masquerading as gentlemen. So it's much more difficult in education. And when I went deep into it, I found a series of mafias. The B.Ed and D.Led colleges mafias, the teacher selection mafias to examination, this private school mafias, the publisher mafias. They were replete with mafias. So I started taking them on. In my entire career of 38 years, I've always made myself redundant in every job. In coal, I went to PMO and told them there's no job now. There's only work for 45 minutes. Starting with 24/7, I used to sleep in the office with 40 because I used technology, I delegated, and secretary had no work virtually 45 minutes. In education, after about 20 months that I spent there, that was the first time in my career of 38 years, I felt that I should have continued for a while. For the simple reason, the problems are much more immense, much more complex. So we did try to take on these mafias. Some cases succeeded, some cases failed miserably. One senior IS officer had to resign because the mafias went after him. So that's how life is. You win some, you lose some.
So we are currently facing a major problem in regarding the delay of government job exams. It has been trending all over Twitter and even the news to some extent. So what do you think is the solution to this?
Government jobs.
Yes.
I think we have to get moving. We have to take precautions and get moving. We can't keep postponing it. Because you keep those precautions, keep that social distancing and hold those exams. It's as simple as that. By postponing it, we don't really know when COVID will be over. I mean, we are just wishing. But the damage that it is causing is much more. So I think we have to get moving. Keep those precautions in place and keep moving. We can't stop. The economy and the world cannot stop just because COVID has arrived. Yes, it's a very serious, unusual situation. And what I'm suggesting is not a perfect solution. I wish there was a perfect solution. But if you balance the two out by keep postponing it and doing it. Now, that's why I tweeted also in case of NEET exam and JEE exam. What is the guarantee that the JEE exam or NEET exam can be held in November as some are suggesting? Meaning thereby you lose the entire year. That is worse than holding it now. Now, some people may not have access to the exam. Okay, they were in any case prepared to give the exam next year. Let them give next year. What is the problem? If the exams get postponed and 1 year gets lost, instead of pushing everyone to take the exam next year, let those that can take exam this year, let them take that exam this year. Why should you lose on a year? It's not financial. It's a question of operationally what is better. And to my mind, I think holding the exam, government took the right decision of holding the exam. Now, I'm again saying it's not a perfect decision. There are problems in it. But on the balance of it, postponing it and losing a year, holding it now is much better.
You drove across the country as education secretary. You visited several schools, several cities. So can you share some experiences from there?
Oh, it was an amazing experience. I was growing old, but I loved to travel. And I remember in the beginning of my existence as school education secretary, there were many experts who came in and told me and advised me to go to Finland, England, Holland, Scotland, all the lands of the world. So I thought I might as well see motherland and see if I can understand problems and find some solutions. So I traveled to 24 states in the country. When I say states, they were not merely state headquarters. The first two districts that I visited were Bastar and Sukma, Naxal districts in Chhattisgarh. And then I traveled from Pune to Goa, dropping down on the way, looking at schools and villages. Traveled from Srinagar to Leh, not taking the national highway and going deep inside mountain and there on, so on and so forth. Number of states I visited. It was amazing learning for me. And the best part of it was the wonderful experiments that were happening in the field and successful at that. So in that context, we picked up about 110 models of public-private partnership in the field. Got all these guys over to Delhi over 6 days. I heard them out, sat through, and we picked up 24 out of them, took them back to the states, and I'm so glad even now I see them growing, they're replicating. So a model that was in one place has grown beyond. I mean, I have narrated an incident in my book about my visit to Pastepada. It was a village in tribal area in Maharashtra, and it was a primary school, two-room primary school that did not have electricity. But when I walked into that school with the teacher Sandeep Gund, I was shocked. I saw every child had a tablet. In back of the beyond and tribal area, school did not have electricity. So I had this guy, "Ya, bijli kahan se late ho?" So he took me around the school and showed me a foldable solar panel through which he was charging batteries, and through batteries he was charging these tablets. I was aghast. The next question was, "Where did you get the money to buy these tablets?" Then he narrated his story that when he had come to the school, he had a second-hand laptop. There were about 40, 50 children. Some of them never came to school, all shapes and sizes. He didn't know how to handle them. So he started playing educational videos. So after, say, about 2 months, some parents came to the school and they asked him a funny question. They asked him, "Earlier the children never went to the school. Now they run to the school. What have you done?" So he explained what he did. And then he found the parents interested, so he asked them to contribute 500 rupees each. Now, for poor people, 500 rupees is quite a lot, yet they contributed. He bought 2 tablets and attached them to his laptop, made them into 3 age-wise groups, and played those educational videos. Now, this passion of this teacher, Sandeep Gund, was spread around. So a CSR funding agency and an NGO visited the school, and they were very impressed with the teacher. Anyone would be impressed talking to that guy. So they funded these tablets, around which time I visited the school, and I was also very impressed. So I took a photograph and tweeted it. I used social media for a variety of purposes. Suddenly he became a local hero. So all the teachers from around the area and principals, they started visiting the school like a pilgrimage, and they started copying it in their own way. Someone bought 1 tablet, 2 tablets, or whatever they had to do, different manner. In between, I met the President of India and I narrated this wonderful story to him. Now, this meeting with President was in a different context. There was some time available, so I narrated this to him. He was very impressed. I could make out that he was impressed. So I asked him, "Would you like to meet the teacher?" He said, "Yes." So I got the teacher over to Delhi. Of course, he won the national award and he met the president. The photograph was taken. I tweeted it. Suddenly, Sandeep Gund becomes a national hero. But that's not the end of the story. That model of Paste Pada has now been replicated in more than 50,000 schools of Maharashtra. So these are the amazing sets of stories in the field. I got benefited. I learned a lot. I can't forget that experience of 20 months in the education department.
So during the COVID situation, lack of access has been a major problem in online education. So how should we tackle this?
We held a webinar on, I think I'm forgetting the date, a month ago, or a month and a half ago, under the aegis of Nexus Good, where we discussed models that are being worked out in areas where there is no access. And believe me, fantastic sets of initiatives have been taken. You know, in one case, a teacher set up a loudspeaker in the village, and she used to take lessons on the loudspeaker at a defined period. Now, imagine how innovative. So children used to listen, and then she used to go to each house to collect worksheets and distribute the next one. Amazing. See, I mean, I couldn't have thought of that idea. Then people are using radio because radio is available almost in the entire country. Then there is television. Of course, these are one-way communication. Two-way is very difficult. So people are coming up with innovative ideas to reach out to children. This, of course, is not a substitute for physical education. Certainly not. But given the set of circumstances, this is the best possible forward. And I really admire the commitment of people who are coming up with these innovative ideas to reach out to children. It's not easy, but they are trying to do it.
Right. You have also said that reservation hasn't been implemented in the best form. It is not reaping proper benefits. So what
Yes, there is.
alternative
Yeah.
do you suggest?
Yes, please. Yeah. Carry on.
Yes. So what alternative do you suggest?
Okay, so we must look at that reservation is here to stay. As I say that even if I say it is impacting quality and things like that, politically it will be impossible for a political party to dispense with reservations. So let's live with reservation. So how do we get the best out of reservation? First, the purpose of reservation is to integrate those segments of the society that have been deprived on caste or communal caste lines. Okay. Now, by giving this benefit repeatedly to the son, daughter, and grandson, daughter, or the person who's benefited once, we are actually increasing that difference. So my suggestion number one was that you give this benefit to one generation and thereafter treat them as an integral part of the society. Don't give them benefit of reservation. So this way you'll be able to spread the reservation wide and you'll be integrating more and more people. Right now, there is an accepted elitism within this scheduled caste. Some people are cornering all the government posts. So that is one. Because you have to spread. And secondly, that psychological barrier that gets created can be broken if that benefit does not continue to the next generation. So next generation should not treat them as scheduled caste. Because, the title of my chapter probably here and in the article that I've written is, why are we putting premium on remaining backward? They should be integrated and that's it. That benefit should go to somebody else. This is doable. And this is politically acceptable. Someone has to think and do it. Secondly, I've suggested bring the level of those belonging to scheduled caste, doing everything that you can in terms of providing education, training, anything that you do. But when it comes to selection, you don't select them on the basis of merit. Give them a handicap. So give them a handicap of say 5 marks. But don't get somebody who's 20% below the residual one at the same level as this one. Give them a handicap. Let them try and arrive at that end. So you will not be sacrificing on merit. Right now, there is a massive sacrifice on merit because the eligibility list of scheduled caste is prepared separately and the general candidates is separately. If you give them a handicap of maybe 5 or 10%, then the difference between the two will not be that big. Right now, the difference is enormous. So I have given a few suggestions on how it can be handled. And all this is politically acceptable, I think. But someone will have to sit down and take a look at it.
Right, and I'll come to my last question. What is your message for young bureaucrats?
Young civil servants?
Yes.
Okay. My suggestion to them is do what you think is right. Go for what is good for you. Don't go by what is good for someone else. If you are focused on yourself, on your own future, on your own ethical values, then you will not really come to grief. So don't give up, don't give in, go by your heart, look inwards, try and improve yourself as an individual. And as the last couplet of my book says, to me, that's the message to them. खुद ही को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा।